All right, so what does the future of music look like? Well, to try and help us answer that, we're joined by Michael Brandvold. He's a music marketing digital strategy expert and consultant. Michael, thank you for joining us.
You're quite welcome, Michelle.
Michael, Apple Music launched on Tuesday. Now, Apple is a little late to the streaming party, but can Apple still change the game? Can Apple change the way we listen to music like it did 10 years ago with the iPod and iTunes?
Yes, they can, and I think their big advantage is they already have a footprint on quite a few devices, mobile phones, iPads, and desktops all over the world with iTunes, and customers already using iTunes. So that gives them quite an advantage over all the other competitors that are out there.
They do have that, as you correctly point out, but there are a lot of competitors in the market. You've got music streaming services from Tidal to Pandora. Spotify is the market leader with about 60 million users, 20 million paid subscribers. So what do you think it's going to take for consumers to cross over to Apple Music?
I think the challenge is going to be to get the user that has never used streaming services before, or even are aware of streaming services, but is a customer of iTunes and downloading, to move over to that other side, the Apple Music side, and give it a try. They don't have to install any software. It's there. It's on their system already. And they'll be able to realize that they've got a catalog of 30 million tracks available to them for $10 a month.
All right, so given this, if Apple's moving towards streaming, which it is the concept of iTunes and paying for individual downloads, well, practically dead now? Are paid subscriptions to streaming services the way forward?
I wouldn't say it's dead, but it sure is dying. Streaming is the future, and paid streaming is the future that all of the content creators, the musicians, and the right holders clearly want it to go, because they deserve to be paid for their work. So a paid subscription model to a streaming service is the ideal platform for all of these content creators that are out there.
Well, Michael, you say they deserve to be paid for their work. Certainly they do, but keep in mind that the global music industry has been on a massive decline in terms of revenue. If we look at a report by the International Federation of the Pornographic Industry, music revenues have dropped drastically. They were down 0.4% in 2014 from the previous year. They've been decreasing for more than a decade. According to Music Business Worldwide, revenues have dropped by 43% over the past 15 years. Now, this is a big concern for the record label and artists and the industry at large, isn't it, when you have your revenue stream down by 43% over the past 15 years?
Oh, it's a huge concern. You know, artists used to make their livelihood selling music, and now that's a very difficult task. You cannot be guaranteed that your music's going to sell just by releasing it. So the challenge is to get a platform out there that the consumers are going to adopt. And I think the streaming is the future. That's what consumers are going to. You're going to have you'll have an entire catalog of all music available on your mobile device, on your iPhone, at any point in time. Now the challenge is to convince the consumer that it's worth paying at least $10 a month for.
But if you look at the industry at large, and as we say, the revenues have been on decline, maybe the streaming model isn't the way to go, or is the idea to sort of hook in the consumer with a relatively cheap price tag of $10 a month, and then once they're in and once there are no other alternatives, once you can't go for an individual download, then up the subscription rates and everybody gets on board with paid content?
You know, I would hate to see the bring them in and then start raising the prices. That is something that Tidal, I think, recently did, is they raised the prices on their streaming service. I think it's just, you've got to convince the large number of consumers that are out there, and Apple has millions upon millions of iTunes users, that if they can convert them, I think their goal is 100 million. If they can convert 100 million over to iTunes, over to Apple Music, all of a sudden you now have a revenue stream that shows a lot of promise, that can work.
All right, well, Well, Michael, another question is, what does this mean for radio, both traditional radio and, of course, satellite radio, if you can now have your customized playlist on your phone streaming to you? Are people still going to listen to the radio?
You know, that's a question that's been asked for many years since iTunes first appeared, and you know, the Pandoras of the world have appeared. It's been the death of radio, of terrestrial radio. I don't think terrestrial radio is going to die. I think it has to look at it from a different angle. Terrestrial radio cannot compete at the level of music, meaning you can't just say listen to radio because we've got the songs. No radio station will ever have better songs than I can program on my iPhone with my playlists. What terrestrial radio
So what do they bring to the party?
They can bring to the party personality, something that isn't in the majority of these streaming services, which just give you music. A radio station can add content between the songs. They can tell you stories. They can educate you. They can entertain you. Something that only a human can do. You cannot have a computer system putting that content in between songs.
All right, you can't, no substitute for personality. Thank you so much, Michael Brandvold, music marketing digital strategy expert and consultant.